Hey guys, so today is August 17, 2019, and it is 50 years after Woodstock. And I had yet to be born. I had 26 years until I was born, so I'm almost 24. I wasn't around, my mom wasn't around for it either. But today on the 50th anniversary, I'm going to read you a section of my book that I've yet to publish called the Tri-Centennial Photographer. Please note that I have my Lennon glasses on today instead of my regular glasses. I cannot see out of them that well, but I can see enough to see my script on my phone here. And in short, my book is about a middle-aged man who moves into a new home and he discovers a magical record room with a magical record player and a copy of every record ever released. You put that record on the record player, you put the needle down and you walk outside, it's the exact time that that record came out. So the main character, Irene Gilcundy, which is actually a guy, he takes his amateur photography skills and he uses that to make a business out of it and travels to past events to be able to record these events and later on in the 2010s and 2020s release these pictures, of which he keeps in contact with the people that he meets at these events. So the year is 1969. The character was born in 1965 and it is 48 years from when Woodstock started. I started writing this book in 2017 in March or April. In my book I use music of the Woodstock event and I use that as a time card. So if Jimi Hendrix is playing, it is obviously the last day of the festival. And so when Jimmy's playing the Star Spangled Banner, it's the last day of the concert, the event. So there's going to be footage from the actual event in this video to show the time and to show the artistry of my writing in the Tri-Centennial Photographer, copyright 2017. Gotta take off these glasses so I can read better. Much better. He looked down at his camera, turned it on, took off the lens cap, and hit the shutter button a few times. An idea kicked in, realizing what his main purpose was being there. So Irene put the lens cap back on, secured his backpack, and did something that he just knew would work. It was a risky feat. He decided that he was going to get to the stage. The stage was a few thousand feet away. The stage was the size of a matchbox from his view. He stood up on his toes to see around some of the attenders, and the sun shone through their hair, red, blonde, and black, with a little bit of white and gray. It was then when Irene started to excuse himself up to the front of the line with thousands of folks who politely made a little bit of space. There's barely a "hey man" or a "hey what are you doing" when Country Joe McDonald, as he noticed a lot of skins that he had walked by, started repeating after him. Give me an F! They all yelled F, well, most of them except for the ones he was trying to part through. He yelled, "Give me a U!" They yelled. He continued, "Give me a C! Give me a K!" He stopped for a little longer, but not much than what he had spent between the letters he spewed into the microphone. "What's that spell?" He yelled. The distortion of his voice went off through the speakers from the microphone. The crowd yelled, "What's that spell?" Irene accidentally made a kid trip because of his bad foot placement. However, no profanities. Country Joe McDonald yelled again through the microphone. "What's that spell? What's that spell?" The crowd yelled, answering his question. 500,000 people only made the sound equivalent to the microphone. They screamed. Irene continued through the crowd. He was going at a faster pace, and by the time he was about halfway through, Country Joe was halfway through a rag.
Now you can go out and get those reds, cause the only good commie is one that's dead. And you know that peace can only be one when you're blowing them all, the kingdom comes.
Irene stopped for a second, take in the lyrics for a second or four. He refocused and then continued in the process of making the two to his side very uncomfortable being shoulder to shoulder with him. Old enough to be their daddy, but young enough to be his son.
Sing it! 1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for? Don't ask now, don't give in. Louder! Be a man. And it's 5, 6, 7, open up pearly gates. Well, I ain't no time to wonder why we be all.
He was so close to the stage, so close. Let himself up to the stage, his hands holding the edge, thinking to himself, holy crap, I'm this close. What a hell of a lot of good pictures I'll get from here. Be right back. Even hippies need water. The music wasn't as interesting as the people who were there. Most attenders, 1 or 2/3, dispersed throughout the event, making their way through trips. The music was more like background music to the drugs they were doing, the sex they were having, the babies that were crying. And even the ones who had passed out in their tents that some of the more Boy Scout on my honor was prepared for.
Now come on, mothers throughout the land, pack your boys off to Vietnam. Come on, fathers, don't hesitate. The send your sons off before it's too late. Be the first one on your block, have your boy come home in the box.
He made it to center stage where he met a few of the filmmakers that were recording the sets going on. He asked for the set list and they did not question one damn thing about him. Hell, he didn't even have to pay to get into the event. His ankles scratched a little bit, but nothing worse than a cat would give if you were pissing him off. Burke Uzzle was the main photographer and videographer for the event. There, however, wasn't a set list. It never even occurred to them to make a set list. He just listed them off, approached them, and after a little bit of talking, started talking about the acts that were performing. This is the first dialogue by someone else, so I'm gonna stand over here for him, and over there for Irene. Okay, so Richie Haven was just on, Sweetwater, and then there's Bert Summer, Tim Hardin, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, Arlo Guthure, and then there's Joan Baez, Quill, John fucking Sebastian, the Keith Hartley Band, hell of a name, Santana, the incredible string band, looking forward to that, Canned Heat, and then the Dead, my favorite. Want as many shots of those guys as possible. Leslie West with the Mountain, and the Mountain, takes a breath and continues, CC fucking R, you know them, right? Irene says to them, the album they just released. Burke nodded. Hell yeah, Green River, hell of an album. He continued listing them off. Janis Joplin, oh man, am I in love with her, if you know what I mean. He nudged up against Irene. Yeah? Irene asked. Irene breaks out of a daze. Sorry, what was that? Burke starts over. Well, it starts with Richie Havens, Sweetwater, Bert Summer, Tim Hardin. Irene talks over him. I know those ones. What was the last band you mentioned? Burke responds. Janis Joplin, I got the rock for her. Irene nodded his head. Yeah, they high-fived each other. Burke continued listing off names. Sly and the Family Stone, The Goddamn Who, wow, I'm a fan of those guys. Jefferson Airplane, another goodie. Then we got Cocker, Country Joe with the Fish, separate from the act that he was just on there for. 10 years after, Johnny Winter, Blood, Sweat and Tears, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Irene interrupts him. When I was a kid, I used to refer to them as, I think, like Crosby, Stills Nation. Burke shakes his head like a jerk reaction to something. Kid? How old are you even? Irene spills, 52. Burke laughs. Old timer. He laughs again. Wait, what the fuck? CSNY's only been around for a solid year or two. Irene laughs. I'm nothing. I'm just a kid. He wasn't wrong. He was just 4 years old at this point. I guess, Burke says. Irene answers, yeah. Burke continues. And then there's the Butterfield Blues Band, Sha-Na-Na, then the Wild Man of Pop, Jimi Hendrix. Irene only recognized a few of the bands, but knew that most of them had died in his lifetime. Burke continues, looking at his clipboard. You should hear who isn't coming. They cut the act. You know how business is, right? All about the money. Irene just raises eyebrows. Yeah. He pounded his finger on the clipboard, which got Irene upset, tensing up. Whoa, fuck, man, are you okay? Bert asked. Irene answered, oh, yeah, why? You're kind of out there for a second there. I looked a little uncomfortable. Irene regrettably said, just a little PTSD. Burke dropped his clipboard and made the most terribly exaggerated but completely readable facial expression. Fuck, he yelled. Were you in the war? Irene stuttered, Burke screamed, I was too! I wasn't, Irene answered. Burke responded, you have post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Look, Irene says, yeah, let's just drop it. Burke took a sudden change in topics and asked, hey, what kind of camera do you have there? Irene picked it up, which is actually the camera. I based off the camera that I am using right now. You ain't no photographer, you don't know what kind of camera you got. Irene glanced at it. It's a Canon. Burke laughed. Looks brand spanking new. I've never seen anything like that before. Irene responds, it is. I think I've had it for a year or two. Before that, I just used my... Looked into Burke's eyes and he quickly changed. It was a disposable one. Burke just shrugged it off. Irene could not remember when disposable cameras were even invented, or even an instant Polaroid. He shook his head and continued his thought, kneeling down to pick up his clipboard. The Zepp. Led Zeppelin. Do you want to know why? Irene answered, sure, I guess. Burke answered, speaking slowly, are you sure? Might change your taste in them. Irene blinked twice, quick, and said, lay it on me. Burke groaned. Too big for the event, apparently. They didn't want to be next to Hendrix and Joplin and the Dead. Irene responded, well, fuck a duck. Burke spit out a bit of saliva in attempts to laugh, with a soft snort. And we were so close to getting the Beatles over here. John had a fucked up passport and something about another concert, I guess? He continued, but with the looks of this concert though? Put his clipboard down and use his hands to illustrate his depiction. You see all those people? There's like 500,000 kids out there. He pointed to the parking lot where the kids were parked in a 100 or so mile radius. They said there's 1.5 million that are on their way. Everyone's gonna go regret not coming. What a turnout. I think it might just be a world record. Great way to end the 60s. Irene looked down at his camera and lifted it up, flipping the switch. Do you mind if I just... Burke moved aside a little. Of course. Go ahead. Irene took off the lens cap, set the camera to film mode, the only camera setting he knew how to use, focused the camera, and with his left hand he zoomed into the perfect frame. The white balance was spot on. He kept the shot steady, kept his hands steady from the weight of the camera body, and then took shots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he zoomed out a little and then took a few more pictures. 1, 2, 3, 4. Burke tapped his shoulder. I don't think we've introduced each other. Irene responded, putting his camera down, and turned around to greet Burke. I'm Irene. Then Burke asked, you got a last name? Irene just smiled and said, Cundy. Burke threw his hand at Irene. I'm Burke. Burke Uzzle. Irene was an amateur photographer, at best. He knew one thing, and that's his camera was better than every single camera that had existed in 1969, and that he had been exposed to incomprehensible art, photographs and paintings, sculptures and sketches, banners and company logos, t-shirts and shoes. It was a blank canvas, unlike the field which he stood in. He walked off the stage, forgetting that there were hundreds of thousands of people, being able to successfully drown out all the noise that 500,000 hippies created. It was all new to him, and he'd only spent a few weeks in the 60s, despite the first 5 years of his life, which was blown from his mind. The 60s may have been a decade of social change, but environmentally wise, nobody really cared about pollution. At least not yet. The Naked Indian was about to strike, and this event, the very event that he was attending, eating a sandwich on that hundreds of thousands of people were streaking, smoking, and sleeping, was where the whole revolution began. He remembered a certain remarkable quote by Tommy Lee Jones in Men in Black. A person is smart, but people are dumb. A hippie extended a stick of something and asked, hey man, you look rough. You anywhere? He asked. I don't know how much of that's going to be in the video because I don't know how long that's going to be when I edit it. But that's just a sneak peek of my book, The Tri-Centennial Photographer, copyright 2017. I haven't made the cover yet, but I've got the start of it. I have this here record. Little records that have symbolic references to the movie, or the or book. Well, maybe a movie. I have this camera lens. Put it right in the middle there. There we go. And with that, I'm going to say, here's to another 50 years. Thank you, Kornfeld and Lang, for staying around to be here for the 50th anniversary of Woodstock in Bethel, New York. Peace. My name is Jaimee. Keep it casual.